Chapter 27 of A Superfluous Woman by Emma Frances Brooke. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Bruce Peary. Dr. Cornerstone sat in Lord Harriot's dining-room. His wine remained untasted beside him. He leaned his elbow on the table and his head on his hand, and fixed his eyes thoughtfully on the figure of his host. There was ample opportunity for observation. Lord Harriot was asleep. He had fallen asleep upon his chair, the table napkin spreading over one knee, his hands dangling and his legs crossed, the dainty shoe being pointed stiffly and with singular aimlessness upward. His immaculate shirt-front, with the diamond sparkles at regular intervals, hooped outward, and his head, the hair most carefully tended, nodded sideways. "The best valeted man I ever beheld," said the doctor. All that the tailor and a priceless personal attendant could do had been done to turn Lord Harriot into a reputable figure of a man. If starch, fine cloth, and shaving could have erased the traces of a past, that past would have vanished under the applications as completely as breath on a well-rubbed mirror. But Lord Harriot's past was a long one. It did not begin with himself. There had been a sameness in the history of the Harriots for generations. It was varied only by the differences in manifestation caused by the different tastes and fashions of the time. The lines of the resulting contour cut deep. Violence and excessive animation in the first instance, the unabashed and muscular tiger who founded the family, had, in the inevitable processes of time, degenerated into meanness, irritation, and vice in such members as did not reap their heritage in insanity, disease, and shocking malformation. That the Harriots had survived at all was the result of the extraordinary advantages in sick nursing which wealth had permitted them to enjoy. That is, the hotbed fostering and care which go to cherish an enfeebled stock. That cause, and one other, had prevented their natural extinction, the other cause being the alliances into which their wealth and titles had tempted England's fair daughters from time to time. For generations the Harriots had purchased handsome women as wives, in much the same way as an Eastern despot buys the inmates of his harem. Had it not been for these two measures, the family would have died out as quickly as the generations of the vicious are said to perish in the slums of London. And in effect the force of the original cause had by this time overmastered the antidotes, and the natural doom had reached them, settling upon the present representative in a horror which appeared to him inexplicable. While he slept, Dr. Cornerstone watched him. In imagination he took this instance of the unfortunate semi-criminal loafer and placed him in the position that suited his capacity, subtracting him, that is, from the House of Lords, and setting him down in the casual ward. Thus clothed upon by circumstance and rags, he presented to the eye of the mind a consistent image. Suddenly the sleeping nobleman awakened. His eyes opened in an empty stare upon a world of which the uppermost reminiscence was of jaded appetite and ennui. Catching sight of the doctor, troubled recollection passed into his face, while his hand betrayed him by seeking the decanter. But he recalled the action, snatching back his fingers, and turning his head nervously aside, the consciousness of temptation being writ in his eye and profile, as in a dog's face one may see the consciousness of a forbidden bone. The doctor still perplexed him by his watchful glance, and at last uneasiness waked him up completely, so that he sat upright on his chair. "Beg pardon, doctor," said he confusedly. "Been having 40 winks, I'm afraid. Trouble. Sleepless nights. He opened his red, pale, lashed lids, and stared before him at misery. In truth, there were causes and to spare for desolating reflection. A sort of whirlwind had passed over the house of Harriet during late past months, and if the confused mind of the master was still capable of entertaining a ray of hope, it was apt to be obscured or hunted down by images of terror. The truth was that the secret chambers of the mansion were empty and open now. In one moment of fierce horror, the brood concealed therein had destroyed itself, the hand of the idiot girl having been lifted suddenly and dexterously against her helpless brother. After the event, the fair mother had sunk into a condition of mental and physical collapse from which she had not yet revived. As to the noble lord himself, only one form of collapse was possible, to which he immediately betook himself. The restraining, guiding hand of his wife being withdrawn, the careful artifice of his reformation tumbled to pieces, and in her enforced absence he plunged into every downward-tending consolation which his diseased taste could devise. Just at this moment, when he sat under the doctor's eyes, staring at misery, his conscience crept with memories and superstitious foreboding. "Not been called yet, doctor, then?" said he presently, rousing himself and recollecting that he was a Harriet and noble. "Not yet," was the obvious reply. The doctor's tone was gentle. This was not a case for abuse. His sympathetic finger was, as it were, on the pulse of that dim bit of humanity before him. "Is there any chance?" asked Harriet, setting forth his importunate hope in a nervous question. "What of, my lord?" returned the doctor. "You know," replied the other after a sulky pause, "you know what I want." The doctor made no answer. The man's willing and desiring was too lamentable a spectacle in the face of the universe. "It's deuced hard on a man to be thwarted in his ambition and wishes," went on Harriet, the flood of complaining being loosed. "I seem singled out for misfortune, and yet all I ask to make things complete is an heir to my name." "Yes," said the doctor, "you seem singled out for a particular misfortune." Lord Harriet took the reply for encouragement. He had ideas to lay before the doctor. They seemed to him an imposing logical array, if only he could get the right one uppermost. He took a silver fruit knife and beat with it upon the table to aid his speech. "I want," said he, "I want her ladyship to pluck up heart and courage. I tell her it rests with her." He glanced up cunningly to see if he had said something impressive. The doctor, gazing at him with quiet, speculative eyes, was striving to draw from his appearance a further clue to Jessamine's mysterious faithfulness. What hidden argument sufficed to hold the wife to her unloved bond, to make her to this diseased and ineffective creature a miracle of self-sacrificing patience? Receiving no answer from his silent guest, Lord Harriet drew out his handkerchief and mopped the moisture from his brow. "Lady Harriet has been a good wife, doctor," said he querulously. "I've nothing to say against her. I wouldn't have anything happen to her for half my fortune. When I married her she was a pack of whims, but I liked that. It's wonderful how she changed after. Steadied, you know. Well, I don't mind telling you, she set herself to reform me. He, he." He rose a little in his chair, tilted the knife up, and lifted his other hand with the weakly spreading fingers, and showed his teeth in a mirthless laugh at the doctor. The latter pursued his silent observation. "I'm not given to sermons myself," continued the noble lord, dropping back to an unbraced attitude. "Don't like them. But when it's a pretty woman preaches, don't you know?" His watery eye, seeking sideways for sympathy in the looser suggestions of his mind, came in contact with the doctor's collected mien. "I give you my word, I haven't tired of her yet. Come, 9 years!" he jerked out in a burst of confidence, the man within him appealing to what he conjectured of the man over there. "No," said the doctor, with uncommitting caution. "Fact," returned the other. He drew together the sides of his dress coat and absently fastened the bottom button. While he contemplated this unusual instance, a faint surprise at its existence in himself rose to a noticeable sensation. It gave weight to his following disclosures. "Look here," said he mysteriously, "I knew you knew. She told me. Well, I didn't want a scandal, see? Kept it all deuced dark. That is why I sent straight for you when the crash came. Now, look here," he repeated, opening one hand, the fingers widespread, and laying the tip of the other upon it to indicate the logical force of his conclusions. "I don't pretend to be a religious man, but I believe in a thing or two. I believe in Providence. And when I see how, at one stroke, Providence cleared away the whole difficulty, swept the place clean of trouble, I feel myself to be specially marked out for something or other. Do you see? I believe in Providence. It would be ungrateful not to trust for the best. What did he make a clean sweep of things for? Why, that we might begin afresh, of course. I don't pretend to be a religious man, or claim more than I should, but that's how I look at things." He pulled his waistcoat down and stretched his dim eyes at his guest, making them into points of watery light. God, how the face was marred! What frightful excess was written all over it! What bestial memories! Where had he been during the months that his wife lay ill upstairs? Again the doctor saw by inference the martyred patience of the woman who had borne the chains of the marriage she had made during the 9 years of which he boasted. The powerful concentrated gaze, which Harriet's attempt at a steady look encountered, seemed to swallow it up. He did not know whether his disordered soul had touched on comfort or not. His eyes wandered off shiftily and nervously, the feeble lids fluttering with weak apprehension. He started off on a new topic. "Yes, she took me in hand," he began. "A powerful mind, doctor, a powerful mind." He shook his head sagely. "I assure you," here he stretched his spreading fingers over the table confidentially, "since our eldest was born, I've been a reformed man. That is to be accurate, until lately. She regularly talked me over, frightened me a bit, I don't mind saying. I was deuced cut up when they told me the girl wasn't right. But she bore it like an angel, got me to promise all sorts of things, regularly took me in hand. You'd not think a man like I am, experienced, you know, doctor, could be talked over by a woman. Well, I was. Don't mind owning up, either." He rubbed his mouth with the table napkin and flicked an imaginary crumb off his knee. Though silent for the moment, his lips were parted, as though the babbling of his fragmentary thought could scarcely be retained. The massive silence of the doctor shook speech out of him as no questioning could have done. If the brain of the woman had but matched this extraordinary power of endurance, the magnitude of this conception of duty, thought the doctor. "Well, I don't mind saying it over again," babbled Harriet. "She fair frightened me. She's not the bullying kind, you know, doctor, or by Jove, I'd have made her feel it. A curious impress of his tigerish ancestor crept out onto his mean face. No, Lady Harriet is the right sort, gets hold of a man the right way. Pretty woman, too, though I say it that shouldn't. And I promised her there and then. I promised her if she'd help me to keep to it and be good to a fellow. Here he wept into his handkerchief, falling suddenly into an access of grief. A slight frown wrinkled the doctor's forehead. He had a shrewd idea that this trickling of tears was as much induced by feeble remorse as anything else, and Harriet presently confirmed the impression. He stammered out his wretched confessions. They comprised a long history of resolutions, which in themselves it was a shame to have made, but some of which, under the assiduous care of Jessamine, it appeared he had kept until the illness induced by shock removed her from his side. Oh, then indeed he had gaily plunged. Every confession of the wretched man was accompanied by praise of the woman whose commiserating care had availed to drag him out of his more conspicuous wallowings, and to place him even so far on clean firm ground as he had reached, before, that is, her withdrawal lent him the opportunity to relapse. I'm not fit for her, you know, doctor. By gad, I'm not. But I mustn't lose her. You must see to that, you know. Only set her on her legs again, and give me my heir, an heir to the name of Harriet, you know, doctor, he continued with fatuous and grotesque pride, and I'll show what I can do in the way of reforming. The doctor's frowning silence continued. The important thing was not that Harriet should reform, but that he and his race should pass into annihilation. Virtue itself meets some too late, and the best to be hoped for is painless extinction. But that the pale, exhausted woman upstairs should have pursued through such dark and fetid ways for years a quest so useless wrung the doctor's heart and amazed his intelligence. What force had not been expended in kindling the tiny rushlight spark to which the titled loafer confessed? What paths of horror had she not traversed in hunting after his worthless soul? What motive lent the impulse to a spiritual expenditure so enormous? Brain, said the doctor to himself, brain is wanting. This meaningless strength and sweetness excruciate the heart that contemplates them. As to the wretched creature before him, hardness and contempt were scarcely possible. In the awful degeneration of the race of Harriet, a depth too low had been reached for even the tonic kick of mankind. Besides, mingled though it was with grotesque vanity and selfishness, the sincerity of the broken creature's attachment to his wife was evident, and turned aside severity. His lordship, copiously weeping into the fine cambric handkerchief, scarcely seemed to expect a reply to his asseverations. He possibly did not remark the doctor's silence. Regaining his composure, he sat quiet, turning his weakened face sideways, and contemplating presumably bleared images of his own creation. When at last the doctor rose to go, he also sprang from his seat, and, nervously seizing his guest's hand, broke into an explosion of incoherent murmurs. "Do your best for me, doctor," said he in a helpless appeal, feeling that his moment had surely arrived, but that Providence was, after all, capable of scuttling off in a base desertion, and that in the strong hand of a friendly man was his final trust. "Any pay, doctor," continued he, appealing now to Mammon. "I'm inclined to think the other fellow's bungled. Do your best." The doctor pressed the wretched man's hand quietly, pity and loathing meeting out his heart about equally between them. Then he turned toward the door. Harriet sank down on his knees by the table in a whimpering access of uncontrollable grief and fear. "Don't be long, doctor," he cried. "Help me, I mean her. It's an important moment. By gad, if we fail this time, air, delicate female." His words scattered themselves off into sobs. The doctor looked back for a moment at the spectacle. Even Jessamine's singular faithfulness could not endow this titled loafer with any halo. "He has been drinking badly, badly," said the doctor to himself as he closed the door behind him. "He'll rot down to the grave in 6 months." End of chapter 27.